Hi, and welcome to this episode of Conversation with a Chef. I'm Jo Ritty, and I love sharing with you the conversations I get to have with talented and passionate chefs. It's the backstory, if you will, to the food they're putting up. I begin today by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, traditional custodians of the lands where this conversation took place, land which was never ceded, land where communities came together to eat seasonally, locally, and without exhausting resources. I pay my respects to their elders past and present and to any First Nations people listening today. Michael Lambie is a renowned chef and restaurateur who has significantly influenced Melbourne's dining scene since the late 1990s. Originally from the UK, Lambie trained under esteemed chefs including Pierre and Alain Roux before relocating to Australia. In Melbourne, he made his mark with establishments such as Stokehouse, Circa at the Prince, Taxi Dining Room and Lucy Liu. After selling Lucy Liu in 2020 and a brief period in Queensland, Lambie returned to Melbourne to open Juni in late 2024. Named in honour of his late mother Juni offers a contemporary Pan-Asian menu which includes dishes that nod to some of Michael's favourites across his career. Michael tells the best stories about chef life in the 90s, wild kitchens, big personalities, and the industry's transformation into what it is today. I loved every minute of this chat, and I could have listened to Michael for hours. So, Michael, it's lovely to see you again.
And you. Nice to see you again.
This is my third visit to Juni, and I was just saying to your guy at the bar that I feel like I notice things. Each time I come, I notice something different. There's a lot to see here.
Yes, there is. And usually it's quite busy as well, so
yeah,
we kind of don't get to see some of the details.
Yeah, and there are a lot of details. And I think we're sitting up in the private dining room, which is so beautiful. And when my first visit, this wasn't finished, so it's nice to see it finished.
No, that's right.
And I really like the juxtaposition of this old school carpet, which is like your mum's old carpet, and then
Grandma's old carpet. Grandma's old carpet, that's right.
Yeah, and then your beautiful embroidered looking Japanese style curtain along the back is so nice. Yeah.
Yes, and it's been quite popular, this room, and I think that, we're into our 11th week.
Wow.
And
gosh, that's gone fast.
It has gone fast, nearly 3 months.
Yeah.
And I think more and more people are beginning to realise that we're open now and we're here, and we're starting to get really, really busy. So that's a good thing.
It's great. Do you think it's a funny time in Melbourne over summer? I feel like the city can tend to be quite quiet, or there's pockets of action?
Look, I kind of feel that when I owned Lucy Liu in Melbourne, it's all sort of down. Everyone during the summer kind of gravitates to Federation Square, South Bank, Flinders Lane, and it's always like everyone's down on the river. And I did notice that when we first opened here, that the city did seem a bit quiet up this end. But I have been informed quite reliably that, once daylight savings is finished and we have a few quieter nights, then this end of the city all comes alive.
And I think a venue like this, with all that beautiful lighting and so on, I think once it does get into sort of duskier, darker evenings, this is going to really glow and it's going to be drawn in.
Yes, that's exactly right. And it's quite interesting that when we first opened, we sort of had a few problems with our lighting, and we came in early one morning and we blacked out the whole of the front with like black bin liners, so it was really dark, and we redone the lights and it looks completely different when it's dark.
Yes.
Because even now, it wasn't getting dark till 9:30 at night, so you didn't get to see what it was actually like when it was really dark. So I think once daylight savings comes, it's going to be very different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, with that projection is so stunning with just the very slow sunset.
Yeah, there's a couple of different ones. But
I've only ever seen the sunset.
No, there's a couple of different ones. We sort of flick it around a bit.
Nice.
But that's a good one as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think anything projected on the wall, it gives a certain ambience, which is great.
Yes.
And you'd had some time away from Melbourne, and now that you're back, does it feel good to be back?
Yes. I think like during the whole COVID, I kind of had a bit of a crossroads in my life prior to COVID, where I got an opportunity to sell my business, Lucy Liu, and I wasn't sure what to do. And, you know, these things only come around occasionally when someone comes along and says, I want to buy your business, and it's a big number.
Yeah.
So I kind of thought, my accountant said to me, you know, what's the worst that can happen? We sell it and we just do it all again. So I ended up selling it, and my plan was to stay in Melbourne and do something new. But then we hit the COVID years, and I was at home and wasn't sure what to do. And I got a phone call one day, and I got an opportunity to open something in Queensland. And it's sort of something that I would never have done. But because it was COVID, and right in the middle of COVID, and, you know, there was no chance that I was going to put money and invest in something in Victoria, that Queensland seemed quite a good idea, even if it was short term. So I kind of, you know, I bought a restaurant up in Queensland in Broadbeach in the Gold Coast, and set up a really good business. Actually, it was great. And but going up there, and I live in Melbourne, so I stayed in Melbourne and I flew up there, and I stayed up there for a couple of weeks, and then I'd come back and then I'd go back up. But it probably took me 4 months to realise that I wasn't on holiday. You know, because you go up there and it was just it was just really different in terms of the business was great, but it was just different in the fact that people's eating habits are really different. Like I don't care what anyone says, but, you know, you go up to the Gold Coast and you don't have the calibre of restaurants that you have in Melbourne and Sydney, and people are not as educated in food, and the dining habits, it's just a different environment, and I just didn't take that into consideration. You know, I kind of thought, you know, we've got a really good brand, we've got a really good name, everything's going to be great. But you get up there and they're like, Michael who? Yes. And they're like, oh, what, you worked in Melbourne? Where? Oh, Lucy Liu, and I own the Smith, and used to be a taxi dining room. And they're like, where? Yeah. You know, people don't know. Just people don't know in general. And and I found that a bit hard to deal with, and I found it that, you know, it's a different lifestyle up there. Everyone gets up at, you know, 4:30 in the morning, and they go for their morning walk, and they have their coffee, and then they go to work, and they're done by 2:30, 3 o'clock. They have dinner at 4:35, and they go to bed at 8. Yeah, and that's the whole of the Gold Coast, you know, that in general.
Wow.
So there was just a number of different variables when I went up there that I never really took into consideration, and I was expecting, you know, we'd be really busy, and I had a really successful business up there, but I kind of thought, you know what, I'm going to sell it. So I sold it. 1 year, bang, put it on the market, and I got a pub group bought it off me, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to take some time to breathe, come back to Melbourne, find a site, do it. And it was interesting that when I sold Lucy Liu, is I had a competition of work against me, which meant that I wasn't allowed to open a restaurant within 5 kilometres of Lucy Liu for 3 years.
That's a tough rule.
Well, you know what? It is a tough rule, but it's kind of like, if you're going to spend that kind of money on a business, then everyone puts it in there. They all do it.
Oh, okay.
And it's just called a competition of work. So they wanted 5 years, I wanted 2 years, and we settled on 3.
Okay.
And but, you know, by the time we'd hit COVID, we'd gone into lockdown, I'd gone up to Queensland, I renovated the restaurant, I opened the restaurant, and I closed it, and then I sold it, and then I came back to Melbourne. That was the 3 years virtually over. There was probably like 6 months or something left on it. And it took me a year to find the right site. I had I had the basement site in David Jones, had a deal done, but that didn't go ahead. I had a site across the road from is it Maison Batard?
Yes.
Chris Lucas's place. I had a site right across the road from that, double fronted shop.
Wow.
That was a great site, but the landlord was kind of quite difficult to deal with. And
Is that down near the Meridian Hotel?
Yeah, next door to the
Right,
Meridian.
yeah.
There's an Asian restaurant there and a 7-Eleven.
Yep.
I was going to take both, knock it all into one.
Wow.
And the landlord is a fool for not putting us in there.
Yeah.
And he actually came in here, and that site's still empty. Like 3 years it's been empty, and I said you could have had this in there. But you decided against it because we couldn't agree on $40,000. It was literally $40,000. And I said, I'll meet you halfway. And he said, no. And I said, okay, done. Good luck. So, anyway.
Yeah. So here you are.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are. So this space was available. Officeworks.
I know.
Yeah, it was an Officeworks space. And I came and had a look at it. And I was like, it's really big, and what are we going to do, and how are we going to, and then I was like, nah, the Burke Street one's probably more suitable, but we couldn't get the deal over the line. Then we had the basement at David Jones, which was a phenomenal site, but for the landlord there, they went broke.
Yeah.
So.
But I think that's amazing vision, and maybe having a site. I mean, it's a lot of work on a site that's never been a restaurant before. So putting in a kitchen and all of those things. And
the landlord here, it's a group called PGA. They're really, really good, like really good people. And I met with them, and they were like, we've got properties all over Australia, and we'd love to have your brand here. And they were like really accommodating in terms of helping me financially and helping us with like putting all the essential services in, grease trap and extraction fan, air conditioning. Well, it doesn't work that well, but anyway, like all of that stuff, they sort of facilitated us really well, which was great.
Yeah.
So there's so much that goes into opening a restaurant like this that no one even thinks about.
No. And that's also that incredible thing of being, a chef. And for me, I have to say, Michael, you're like royalty chef. Like for me, you're one of the big names in Melbourne, and you've worked
maybe not so much now,
with
but
big name. Well,
on the way back.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. But but you're part of the culinary landscape, and you've worked with like phenomenal people in phenomenal places.
Yeah.
In the UK and in Europe. But so there's that, but then you have to have that other knowledge, so you can't just be good at cooking. You have to then, once you get to that level of having your own place and then sustaining that, is you have to have that business knowledge, but also a vision for...
But I remember like when I was a young man, or young boy, let's say, and I was working for Marco Pierre White. Like I always used to kind of criticise Marco Pierre White for not being a great chef but the skill set that he had in terms of negotiating deals, getting restaurants, getting them built, getting the staff, that is something that I've just realised, I've realised how great an operator he was.
Yes.
Because he used to say to me, Michael, I was just like so immersed with all the food and the butchery and filleting the fish and cooking and the lamb sauce and the salmon sauce and all of these sauces. He's like, the food will only take you to here. If you want to have the rest, you got to learn how to run it, how to build it, how to manage it.
Well, how to be a brand. I mean,
Correct.
Marco Pierre White, it's a brand.
Unbelievable.
So what do you mean when you say you criticised his being a chef?
I don't mean it in a bad way, but no, I thought that I'm really creative. So like when it comes to food and stuff, I have like so many different ideas, and I don't think that he had those ideas. I think that he was kind of always playing it safe. But there's nothing wrong with that. I've realised that, you know. I've realised that you don't need to be the most creative chef, because if you're the most creative chef, your food's probably really inconsistent. And Marco was all about the consistency, and this is how we do it. And it's kind of like, I suppose you just don't understand and appreciate that until you get a bit older. And, you have a few wins and you have a few losses, and then you go,
Yeah.
And you know, like when I think of him as an operator, he's the best. And I think he's been surpassed by Gordon Ramsay. But Gordon Ramsay was in his camp as well, and he's taken it all to the next level, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's just an observation and a good journey, you know.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, if we're talking about big names and you say, you know, you were and you're coming back and all that kind of thing, it's an interesting concept, this concept of big name chefs. And for me, and perhaps it's the generation that I am as well, there's certainly some excellent chefs out there nowadays. It just feels like it was a different world in sort of like the 90s. I feel like the 90s was this sort of heyday, 80s, 90s was this heyday of, you know, Marco Pierre White, Gordon Ramsay, June Tanaka, all of those really big names. And the reason I started this podcast is because I had a really good friend in Christchurch who was the head chef of a restaurant in Christchurch, which is a very small town. But she'd worked in London for June at Pearl. And so, you know, Marco Pierre White came into the restaurant, and that was in the 90s.
Yeah.
And so for me, I heard those stories, and I just thought, whenever she spoke about restaurant life, the industry, why you salt at base, why you cut a chicken the way you cut a chicken, I just thought people need to hear this.
Yeah, no,
and she had that experience. Do you think, I mean, is this my romantic view? Because probably the kids that I teach now, I've got no idea about the 90s, like that was the olden days. So a heyday, is that just that's a myth? Or do you think nowadays we could look at what's happening now and go, and you know, in future years going, well, that was the heyday? Or was it just because it was a bit more rock and roll that we've got?
I think that back then it was a bit. I remember when I started, everyone took the mickey out of me. Oh, you want to be a chef? Oh, your souffle's not going to rise. And everyone, like, it wasn't a great job to be a chef. And then you had you know. There was a space, like I had my heroes like Raymond Blanc, the Roux brothers, Nico Landanis, Pierre Kaufman, and then there was a space in London where this young superstar chef came on, Marco Pierre White, and he just revolutionised the whole dining culture, and all of a sudden it was really cool to be a chef.
Right.
And you know, you go out and people would say, so what do you do? And you go, oh, I'm a chef. Oh, you're a chef. Fuck, that's fucking great. Yeah. You know, all of a sudden you're a rock star. Yeah. If you were a good chef, like at that top end level, and it kind of like all of a sudden I remember my hometown. I used to go home, catch up with my family, and catch up with all my mates, and I'd go out and everyone would take the piss out of me, and they'd be like, oh, Fanny Craddock's back and all this. Like there used to be, and everyone would take the piss out of me. Yeah. And then after I worked for Marco and I'd working at the high end, I'd go back and they'd be like, oh fuck, Lambie's back. He's a fucking rock star chef, works for Marco Pierre White. And that's all down to Marco to change that. I hope that explains it.
It does explain it. I think, so there's two parts to that, because I think, yes, the making of the idea of the chef is cool and rock and roll down to Marco Pierre White. But what I'd also say is, from the stories I've heard about you, that you were in with Marco Pierre White, that's about you. Yeah. So from what I've heard, you were in the kitchen at 10 because your parents had pubs.
Yes.
And something drew you in, because you weren't just doing it for the pocket money.
No, you know what? That's really good. I started. My mum and dad had a pub, great big pub, and I started working for them for pocket money. And I was like helping in the pub part, cleaning all the cellars and the cool rooms. And my mum used to look after the kitchen, and I was fascinated by the kitchen. And I used to go in and look at all the salads and stuff. And then I started helping in the kitchen, and then I used to peel potatoes and cut chips. It's crazy. And then I just got the bug, and I was at school.
How do you get the bug from peeling potatoes and cutting chips?
I don't know. Like I was like, you know, we had a school. I mean, I'm talking about when I was 11 or something, and they said to me at school, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I was like, "I want to be a chef." And I just followed it through, and you know, I got more and more into it, and I went to trade school, and then my parents moved to a little seaside town called Whitstable. And
like the Whitstable Pearl?
Yeah, Whitstable oysters and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful little seaside town. There was a seafood restaurant. My sister was working there. And my sister said, "Why don't you come and work with Juni, like the owner of the restaurant?" And I went there, and they used to do like cold lobsters and oysters and prawns and grilled Dover sole and steaks, and I started working there. And then I went to we've got these chain of restaurants in the UK, like Steakhouses, called Beef Eater.
Oh yes.
So I was working at one of them, grilling steaks, and then I was like reading books, and then the owner of the restaurant, the seafood restaurant, said to me, "You're wasted. You need to go to London." And I ended up going to work at Claridge's, which is a big hotel in Mayfair, as like a 17-year-old.
17?
You know, I remember like walking into the kitchen there, and I had my floppy hat on, and I couldn't do my apron up properly, and I was tripping over my apron, and my jacket was all too big for me, and I was absolutely shitting myself, you know. And I remember like going into the kitchen. It was like Piccadilly Circus. There was like 50 people all running around in the kitchen.
Oh my God.
And one of the chefs said to me, "Go and get me some basil." And I went, "Yes, chef." And I went running up to the herb fridge, and I opened up the herb fridge, and there's all these herbs, and I'm like, "Fuck, which one's basil?"
I know.
So I'm like, "Which one's basil?" And I had to get it and take it back to him.
Yeah.
But you know, and then there was a chef there called John Williams, who was the senior sous chef, who has just, ironically, won 2 Michelin stars. He's now the executive chef at the Ritz.
Wow.
Amazing man. And he's from Newcastle, and I used to be shit scared of him. And he took me under his wing. And he loved me, and he guided me and helped me, and he'd help me in the morning. And I just got into it. I started buying books, reading books, like go to bed at night and read books about different restaurants all over France and Germany, and I just kind of got into the Michelin Guide, and then Mr. Williams, I still call him Mr. Williams, right? And Mr. Williams, he said to me, he goes to me one day, "You come here," and he pulled me in the fridge, and he goes, "You've been here 3 years." He goes, "It's time for you to go to Europe," and he goes, "I've got contacts in Germany." He goes, "Don't go to France.
Wow.
Go to Germany.
Is that right?
The best restaurants in the world are in Germany." And I'm like, and I ended up going and speaking to my mum, and I was like, "Mum, I'm going to go to Germany and work." And I ended up going to the Sheraton in Munich, and I got the job at the Sheraton, and you needed a lot of like different documents so you could stay in the country. And then I got all my documents, and then Mr. Williams got me a job in a 2 Michelin star restaurant in Germany, and I worked there. And it was like unbelievable work. I used to wake up thinking, right, I'm in Germany, I'm in Munich, I'm living in Marienplatz, and I'm working at the Königshof. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was 2 stars?
2 Michelin stars.
2 Michelin stars.
And then it was quite funny that I met, this is just the quick story, I met a guy there, an Australian guy from Melbourne, with no coincidence of why I'm here, but I met a guy from Melbourne, and he goes to me, I can pass your details to the Waterside Inn, which is the 3 Michelin star restaurant in Bray. And he goes, "I know that they probably want to take you on." So back then there was no emails and stuff. I wrote them a letter. I wrote the Waterside Inn a letter.
And you're how old now doing that?
19.
19?
Yeah.
So but before the age of 20 you're in these Michelin star places?
Yeah. And I ended up, anyway, long story short, I ended up getting the job at the Waterside Inn. I left Germany, went to the Waterside Inn, stayed at the Waterside Inn for 3 years, which was brilliant. Best place I've ever worked. Like hard work and a lot of discipline.
And what did you love about it?
It was just really well organised.
Yeah.
Like really well organised, and you had to work really hard. Like it was really hard.
Yeah.
And but you know, the training and the pressure, and you're working with the best. Like all the guys are really good. You know, and the team's really tight there. And if you're not good, you just get kicked out.
Yeah.
And I done the hot entrees. I done the fish section. And Mr. Roux wanted me to stay, but this is when Marco Pierre White was on the scene, and I was like, I want to work with Marco. Yeah. So I rang up Harvey's and asked to speak to Marco.
Wow.
And he said to me, come and see me on your day off. I went and saw him. And I sat in the front window with him, and he was the most intimidating man I'd ever met. And I remember I sat down and he had a packet of cigarettes, and he took out a Marlboro and he lit his Marlboro.
Iconic.
And then he threw the packet at me and he goes, so you want to be a chef? Really? Like mafioso style. So you want to be a chef? And I went and worked with him, and I stayed with him for 4 years.
Wow.
And then I came here. So
that's incredible, because obviously these great people, and already by that age you'd worked with really great people, exceptional chefs and operators.
Yeah.
What's the difference then between a good chef, and you sort of touched on it before with being creative and so on, and I guess hard work. Can anyone be a chef? I like cooking, but I don't see myself as being able to be a chef because of the way you have to operate.
Yeah.
But then what's the difference between being a good chef and then being a great chef?
Well, look, that's an interesting question, and it's hard to answer. And I think that I think that you've got a lot of great chefs that never get recognised. And I think and it kind of boils down to the fact that, you know, Marco was so perceptive. Marco said to me, cooking will only get you so far. So you can be a great cook, okay? You can be a great cook, but once you're a great cook, you've got to be a great organiser, you've got to be a great leader, you've got to be a great motivator, you've got to be able to help people when they're under pressure, and that's all the kitchen operations and you know, maybe the front of house operations as well. But to be a superstar chef, you got to have the right connections, and you know, that's what Marco had. Marco had everyone. He had everyone. Yeah. You know, like, you know, I remember this is a good story. I remember being at the restaurant Marco Pierre White, and like I was just like obsessed with food. It was all about food and cooking and plating and the Michelin Guide and winning 3 Michelin stars. That's all I could think about. That was my whole life. And Marco came in one day, and like the Michelin Guide back then was like this, you know, this Bible that you don't know who they are, and they come in and they review you, and it's all anonymous and all of this stuff. And I but at the end of the day, I've realised now that it's just a crock of shit. Do you know what I mean? But back then it was everything to me. And Marco came in one morning and goes, "We've got a really VIP guest coming in, and I'm having lunch with him today." And he goes, "Michael, I want you to cook for us. We're having this on the menu." So he went through the menu, set menu, make sure that we've got some gifts for him to take away. It was around Christmas. He'd like, get a Christmas hamper, put some ham, some turkey, some crayfish, some truffle, a couple of bottles of wine, and we give it to him when he leaves. He's a real VIP. So anyway, Marco came in after the lunch, walks into the kitchen, all dressed up with his suit, clapping away. He's like, to me, "Come here, boy." And he goes, "Guess what?" And I said, "What, Marco?" And he goes, "I reckon we're going to win 3 Michelin stars this year." And I'm like, "Really? How do you know?" "No one knows. It's anonymous." She said, I just had lunch with the head inspector for Michelin.
Oh.
Michelin, like, Europe, Derek Brown. And I was like, and I was a bit disappointed at the time. But now, genius.
Yeah.
You know, genius. And, you know, when we was slogging it out working at Wandsworth in his little shitty 40-seat restaurant, and we were all working 100 hours a week, you know, he was like signing book deals, doing book deals in France, in the media spotlight, marrying supermodels, in the paper every single day, getting deals done with Trust House 40 to open restaurants all over Great Britain. And you think back and you think, well, if I'm a great cook, is that going to make me really successful? Or if I'm a great person like Marco was, is that going to make me a great...
Well, it depends how you define success then, doesn't
Yeah.
it? If you want that, as opposed to the satisfaction from making the food that's really...
So I'm trying to explain it, but I was just captivated by the food, and I kind of think that Marco was, you know, he was a great cook, or still is, but he was a cook who had the edge because he knew all about the contacts. And I remember once, he said to me once, he goes, remember this, Michael, life is all about the contacts. And it went straight over my head.
Yeah.
Until I'd been away from Melbourne, came back to open Juni, and I realised, who do I know?
Yeah.
Who's the contact that can put me on the map here? So it's just an interesting...
Well, I think it sounds like you're ballsy as well. Like, all those situations, especially as a young person, would be difficult to front up to someone like Marco Pierre White, for example. But it seems like every time you were offered an opportunity, you grabbed it.
But I also had a very... I had a very demanding father that pushed me to do stuff and pushed me out of my comfort zone. God bless him.
Yeah.
But, you know, I owe that to him as well.
Yeah.
Because otherwise... Because I am actually quite a shy person, you know, like, and I'm very private. But I also think that, you know, there's opportunities that are there. It's just the people that take them are the ones that get there. And, you know, a lot of people said to me as well, you know, coming back to Melbourne, opening a new restaurant in the CBD, everyone's saying that the hospitality industry is dead. Why are you doing it? Blah, 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 blah. But, you know...
Yeah.
If I make this work, which I am...
Absolutely.
Then...
But also you're here. So when I came in and we sat up at the bar and had dinner and stuff, and I looked over and I saw you, I was like, this is great, because you've got a really great staff, and Hendry is fantastic.
Amazing, yeah.
But you're here and you're still on the pan, so that's important for you to be here.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think that, you know, you got all these chefs that, you know, now it's different. You know, what constitutes being successful now? You know, is it having a really good Instagram profile and having great reels and great photos of what you're trying to portray you're really doing, but when you're not even there? And I kind of feel that I do have a following of people, and I have had a lot of my old customers, and everyone comes here because they want to see me. And, you know, I don't want to be here 100 hours a week, and I can't be. But I think that, you know, in our setup, I love it. I love it, you know, and I kind of, you know, I've missed it, and I've worked so hard to put all the things in place to get this restaurant open. Then what's the point of opening it and not being here?
Yeah.
The only thing I want really is to be here on my terms. Do you know what I mean? And I've got aspirations of building this group and doing more restaurants and taking the guys with me. Do you know what I mean? Taking my team with me.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, how great. I mean, you were a trailblazer on the front of this Pan-Asian sort of menu when you started at Taxi, and then you've just run with it, haven't you? And it's become your thing.
But it was also like, I mean, I left Marco, came to Melbourne, and I kind of had it in my head, you know, I'm going to bring the Marco style to Melbourne.
Sure.
And I did.
Yeah.
And it didn't really work that well, you know. Like it did and it didn't, but it wasn't super popular. And it just, you know, people said to me, just because it works in London doesn't mean it's going to work in Melbourne. And it didn't. And my wife said to me, you need to reinvent yourself. She's like, all this stuff that you're doing, it's all 1990s Marco Pierre White. She's like, come on, Lambie, let's fucking up the ante. She's like, go and have a look around Swanston Street. It's full of university students that are all from Japan, from Thailand, from Hong Kong, from China. She's like, the new cuisine is Asian. Let's get with the program. Right? No, that's exactly what she said. And I met at the time, I met a guy called Paul Mathis, who had this idea about taxi dining room, and he said, you know, I want to do an Asian restaurant, and I didn't want to do it. And that's when Vic said to me, and then I kind of like, it was almost like boom, the light went on.
Gosh, you've had great voices and people in your
you know what? Do you know? Yeah, so that's how it all came about. And you know, Paul was really good. Paul was like, you know, Melbourne is going to be the hub where it's going to be a melting pot of cultures. And, you know, it used to be Italian and Greek and cafe culture, and now it's going to be Asian. And I kind of thought, you know what, he's right. And you know, and it's kind of modern Australian, isn't it?
That's true.
So, but it's interesting that you say I've had a lot of voices, because what we tend to do is we always listen to the people that tell us what we want to hear, but we never listen to the people that tell us what we should do. And I kind of like, I've been down that road with everyone blowing wind up my bum, and now I listen to what I have to do in order to make things work. Yeah.
And do you still, maybe not as feverishly as when you were 18 or 19, but do you still look at are you still reading books?
Yeah,
and
well look, I think
elsewhere?
it's different now, I think, because the internet is so available, and you can basically look at any menu from all over the world at the click of a button. But yes, you know, I always look at what the new trends are, and you know, like drinks, cocktails, you know, ingredients. But it's different. I think since COVID, it's different. And you know, since the you know, the wage theft scandal and all of that, you know, this generation of people are different. You know, like the kids are different. They're not so driven. You know, it's hard to find really good staff. You know, everyone wants to work from home and get a job selling bloody toys on the internet or whatever. Yeah. So it's hard to find the right people.
That's right. And then for those people within that structure of, you know, wages and hours and all of that kind of thing, you know, like when you were coming through, people did stages, right? So because they wanted to learn, so they were willing to not be paid just to learn all of the stuff. And I think it must be harder and harder.
You know that's good that you brought that up, because I used to do stages everywhere. Yeah. Right. When I worked at the Waterside Inn, there was 11 chefs on the payroll and 20 chefs that are all doing stages. And all the stages that I done a stage in any top restaurant that you can name in the 90s. I worked there for one day. Mr. Roux sent me to Strasbourg to a restaurant called La Crocodile, which was a 3 Michelin star restaurant. I went there and I worked there for a month for nothing, or not a month, maybe 3 weeks for nothing. And all of this stuff now that's deemed wage theft, that's my backbone. That's what made me who I am. That's what gave me the knowledge.
Well, it's a shame, isn't it? It's a shame that, you know, for lots of places it's difficult to teach staff butchery or filleting fish or whatever, because it all takes so much time.
They don't know. They've got no idea. No, if you can't open a Cryovac bag and it's there, you know,
it's tricky.
At the Waterside Inn, we used to get, one day we'd get whole lambs, the next day they'd get whole pigs, The next day they'd get an RG of beef. It all used to get hung in the fridge, and it all used to get butchered. All the fish would come in whole, live lobsters. Now these kids now, they wouldn't even know where to start.
So what's your advice to them?
Well, I think first of all you got to love it, and I think you've just got to follow your dreams. You got to work hard. I think that there's no shortcuts. So, but what you've got to do is you've got to be diligent, and you've got to look around and keep your head on your shoulders. And I worked on the fish at the Waterside Inn, but I spent most of my time on the meat, watching the chef on the meat do all his sauces and his butchery, and I learned how to do that section by not actually doing it. So you've just got to, because otherwise it's quite painful. Because I went to the Waterside Inn after working at Claridge's and the 2 Michelin star restaurant in Germany, and they put me on the salad section, and all I used to do was pick salad and make a vinaigrette. And I used to serve the salad that went out with the main course.
Oh, wow.
And that was it.
No.
That was it.
For how long?
3 months.
What?
That was it.
But you had to be excellent.
Yeah, and it's the discipline.
Yeah.
And Mr. Roux, the head chef there, I can't remember what his name was now, but the head chef used to say to me, "Oh, it's not busy tonight, Michael, so you can do the salad, and we're going to send the kitchen hand home, and you can wash the dishes as well."
Oh.
And I'd be like, okay. But I just did it.
Yeah, you can't.
I just did it.
Blame.
And it's kind of like, it's like a test.
Yeah.
And, like working with Marco in the kitchen, he was a lunatic. He was a lunatic, and I used to love it. I used to...
Like, would he throw things, or...?
Crazy.
Right.
Unbelievable. Like, I can't even explain.
Did people leave because of that? Yeah.
He used to weed them all out.
Yeah.
Weed them all out, and he was a nutcase. And I like when I first started there, it was really hot in that kitchen, and we'd all be prepping in the morning, and then all of a sudden he'd come in, and if he had a jacket on and jeans and shoes, they'd be like, "Oh, Marco's going out tonight." Everyone would be like, "Oh." If he had a chef's jacket on, I'd be like, "Oh my God, what the fuck is going to happen tonight?" Do you know what I mean? Because he used to just go like crazy.
Yeah.
Like, and it would just be a switch. And I think I done a podcast in Port Douglas, but there was one thing. He used to sit in the restaurant and answer the phone. This gives you an idea of what his character was like. He used to answer the phone and try and get customers to come in. And he came running in. He came into the kitchen one day, and he's like, "Guys, every second phone call is for one of you in the kitchen." He's like, "Can I just let you know, from now on, no fucking phone calls while you're at work." And this is before mobile phones.
Yeah.
Next thing, the phone rang.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's like something out of a comedy movie. The phone rang. Someone answered the phone and went, "Roger, phone call." And that Marco was just like, he just turned, and he went, grabbed the phone. It was on the wall. Ripped it off.
Oh my God.
He's like, "Get me the meat cleaver."
No.
And he was like, and smashed his phone up. And he's like, "Do you understand?
Wow.
No more fucking phone calls in the kitchen." The phone's fucking everywhere.
Yeah.
And he just walked out. That was it. Like, that was what you faced.
How do you even...
But I kind of got into it, and I loved it.
Mm.
I loved it. And I kind of like, I used to just think, right. I was like, working with him, you're like the SAS of kitchen staff. Do you know what I mean? But it was great.
Elite. The elite.
Yeah. And nothing would faze me. And I was tough.
God, that's great.
Mentally tough. I still am,
Yeah.
And I think that, for the young kids today, they've got to go through that. But, it's almost like there's a guy called Dana White. He's an American guy who owns the UFC. Right? I know it's not to do with cooking or this podcast, but he says, in this generation of kids, if you want it and you've got it and you're tough enough you can do anything that you want because they're all weak. Like all the kids are weak.
Oh, you're right.
He goes, they're not mentally strong, and I think that, you know, anyway, that was something that just touched me from him.
Yeah. Good luck to the youth.
Well, no, they're great, but it's different.
No, I know. I totally understand.
It's different.
Yeah. Look, thank you so much. Thanks for your time. It's been so
thank you.
good. I love your stories.
No, well, they're all true. No, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Conversation with a Chef with Michael Lambie at Juni. You can check out the beautiful food and fit out on Instagram at Juni Melbourne. That's Juni Melbourne. If you'd like to hear more stories from other chefs, I'm on Instagram at Conversation with a Chef. You can read the chat and become a subscriber at www.conversationwithachef.com. And of course, you can follow me on Apple and Spotify podcasts. I would absolutely love it if you told a friend about my chats because that's still the best way to get the stories out there. Once again, thanks for listening, have a great day and bon appetit.